So, what is America? Is it just a place on a map, a government, or is it something more? In this explainer, we're going to dig into the idea that the story of America is really the story of one single powerful concept, that people have the power to act for themselves. Let's see how that one idea ended up shaping an entire nation.
This quote really just nails it, doesn't it? Before the United States was even a country, this belief was already starting to bubble up. It's this pretty radical idea that government isn't something that just happens to you, but it's something you get to actively build yourself.
All right, so let's lock in our key term here, agency. Now, this isn't just about being free. It's about the power to use your freedom, to make your own choices and, to write your own part of the larger story. This concept, agency, that's the lens we're going to use to look at the whole history of the nation.
Okay, so this whole idea didn't just pop up out of thin air in 1776. Nope, the seeds were planted way, way earlier. Let's take a look at where this story really gets started.
I mean, think about this for a second. Long before there was a constitution, you've got this group of settlers on a boat, and they draft the Mayflower Compact. It was a simple but totally profound agreement. We will govern ourselves. You could argue this was the very first collective act of American agency.
And as the colonies started to grow, so did this spirit of taking action. When things got tense with Britain over taxes and stuff, the colonists didn't just sit around and complain. They got organized. Groups like the Sons of Liberty and these committees of correspondence, they built actual networks to pass information and plan what to do next. This was agency, getting organized.
All that informal organizing, well, it eventually led to a major breaking point. And with it came the need for a formal plan, a real blueprint for a nation that was going to be built on this very idea of the people's power.
And here it is, the blueprint itself, the Declaration of Independence. It wasn't just some breakup letter to a king. It was a mission statement. It laid out this wild idea that the whole point of government is to serve the people, to protect their rights. I mean, that completely flipped the old way of thinking on its head.
And here's the core promise of the nation, probably the most famous line ever written in American history. A bold, incredible statement of equality. But, and this is a huge but, this brilliant ideal immediately slammed into a deep and very painful conflict.
Because this created a brutal contrast that you just can't ignore. The nation was talking a big game about liberty for all, but at the same time, it was being built on the back of slavery and the forced removal of Native American peoples. The promise and the reality, they were worlds apart.
And this brings us to the central question, the one that would haunt the country for the next 100 years and frankly still echoes today. How do you square that circle, this fundamental tension, this hypocrisy? It became the engine for so much of American history.
Well, that tension couldn't hold. Something had to give. And it led to the nation's biggest test, a horrifying war fought not against some other country, but against itself, all over the meaning of its own founding promise. And the cost of trying to fix this contradiction was just staggering, around 600,000 lives lost. That's not just a number in a textbook. It was a conflict that tore the country apart, literally brother against brother. But out of that unbelievable loss came a new sense of purpose. Abraham Lincoln framed the war's ultimate goal as creating a new birth of freedom. It was a chance to remake the nation, to expand the very definition of who got to be included in that promise of agency. And this wasn't just talk. This new freedom was written directly into the country's DNA. The 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, they changed the Constitution itself, ending slavery and expanding citizenship and voting rights. Now, the fight to make those rights a reality was far from over, but the blueprint had been rewritten.
The end of the Civil War wasn't the end of the story. Not even close. If anything, it just set the stage for all new groups to step up and demand their chapter, to fight for their own agency.
So over the next century, you see these huge, successive waves of people demanding to be heard. You've got industrial workers fighting for fair pay and safer conditions. You have women organizing and marching for the right to vote. And of course, the massive civil rights movement, demanding an end to segregation and the fulfillment of those promises made a century earlier.
And look, all this action led to real, concrete results. The fight for agency wasn't just symbolic. It led to massive changes in the law and in society. Every single one of these milestones represents a hard-fought victory that expanded who gets to be a full participant in the American story.
All of which leads us to a really important takeaway. The story of American agency isn't some dusty old thing in a museum. It's not over. It is a live, active debate that's happening right now.
If there's one thing to get from all this, it's that progress in America has pretty much never been a neat, straight line. It's an argument, a loud, passionate, and sometimes really divisive argument about what freedom actually means and who gets it. That argument, it isn't a bug in the system. It is the system.
But through all that messiness, through all that fighting, there is this one golden thread that connects everything. From that simple deal made on the Mayflower, to the Declaration, to the Civil War, and all the great social movements. The core belief is exactly the same, that ordinary people, when they act together, have the power to shape their own destiny.
So, that leaves us right here, with this final thought. The story isn't finished. The argument keeps going. And if the history of American agency has taught us anything, it's that the future isn't set in stone. The next chapter is blank.